Do you remember being a kid? It's 7 AM on a weekend, Saturday morning. You wake up with this soft glow gently lining your face, your body returning to this world. You're free. You're a kid. You go out of your door and you slowly tiptoe down the corridor, hoping not to wake up your parents as you go to the living room. They don't want to be woken up either, because they don't want to hear how Harry Potter should have fixed his eyes instead of his glasses for the 5th time. You grab your PS3 remote and you sit down and you choose which game to play. What should you play? There are so many choices. Yesterday you played Wii Sports all day. Wii Sports is so much better than real sport. Last week at soccer class, Mason said Santa doesn't exist. What a dickhead. Man, being a kid is the time of your life.
But, of course, like all times, such a time does come to an end. Of course, it'll be reborn for the new generation in a new way, but for us, and for our generation, that time has passed. But I have a theory. It's my belief that the events and the experiences of the past still live on in a new way. I believe that the entertainment that we enjoy today is mainly shaped by the experiences of the past. Let me show you. Around the start of March, my girlfriend indoctrinated me into the cult that is known as Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir. Now, as I joined this fan base of terrifying creatures, I realized something rather odd. That deep down, no one actually really likes the show, even the fans of the show. The fact is that the show is poorly written, it has really forced story arcs, and it sets unrealistic beauty standards. I mean, how am I meant to compete with this guy? I can hear him asking me to do his Snapchat streaks while he goes on Year 7 camp. But the thing that fascinated me is that people still watched this show. And more than just that the people who were watching this show weren't just mindless kids who don't know any better, but teenagers. People my age and older. I mean, I had a Miraculous TikTok go pretty viral on TikTok. Viral. And the people commenting were, most of the time, older kids. In fact, even big creators who are clearly easily above teenage years. And obviously, it's not just them. I can't say that I'm the exception because I watched all 3 seasons of Miraculous, including the season 4. Don't ask me how it's going. It is water torture. It's slower than trying to cook eggs on a dashboard. It is terrible. And I mean, hey, you can find evidence of this yourself. Just go on Instagram and search up Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir, and your feed will be flooded with edits of these 14-year-olds for months. I bring this up because of something I read by Orson Welles, where he says that the absence of limitation is the enemy of art. At first, it felt contradictory, but the more that I thought about it, the more I realized there was something really interesting to do with that. Kids shows. There are many children's shows with great writing, but yet they still have to target children. They have to be for children that would understand what's happening, and they also have to have themes that are suitable for children. And there are some great kids' movies and shows. For example, Toy Story 1, 2, 3, and 4, Ratatouille, The Dream SMP. Granted, that last one maybe not great writing, but it's still childish.
But Miraculous is genuinely just a really good show for kids. It's a really simple story. A good guy, bad guy, and a couple of friends along the way. It is perfect for children. It's like, oh yeah, mate, maybe that was like intentional or something. Just shut the f-. Now, obviously, the writing in the show itself is garbage. It is genuinely bad. But the fact that I somehow remained glued to the show for 3 seasons proves that there is something to a childish writing style. Or maybe I should just be in jail. But I do think there is a spectrum of whether or not you should use the tools given to you in the skill set of writing for kids. And those skills of children's writing is what we'll be exploring today. So our first exploration into the toolbox of children's writing styles is here. And as I move, my camera decides to make me look whiter than a weeb's jar. The first tool I'd like to talk about is nostalgia. Now, this won't necessarily work for kids' films themselves because they're what's going to be nostalgic, but adults' films, hoping to take techniques from kids' films. Nostalgia is a very powerful tool. And it's not just me thinking it. From one article I read, it suggested that nostalgia was something that created joyous emotions seemingly out of nothing. Sentimental value is something that isn't logical, yet it feels more real than almost anything else. For example, I love the Transformers movies. Especially number 1. I grew up watching that. I love them because they were cool, they were fun. The characters seemed to be so memorable. Watching these interlocking parts weave and change was like magic to my little child brain. And I will take credit for being the only person to watch Transformers for the story, and not the many poses that Megan Fox had to get into that only the 2000s could get away with. But yet, everybody who's aged past the age of 2, they say watching it is like walking past their local tip. No joke, I went to my local Cashies with my girlfriend and they were selling it for 50 cents. 50 cents! Nostalgia can be used in a very, very smart way. Not just for cheap laughs or cash grabs, but very smart ways. I mean, the new Spider-Man movie, of course, but another thing that recently got very big. You know it, you're sick of hearing of it. Squid Game. Now, I get that Squid Game is slowly becoming the Wonderwall of the Netflix world. You're kind of sick of hearing every overpaid YouTuber talk about it just because it was a trend for a couple of weeks. But the thing is, the show is really deserving of the praise that it gets. I mean, the acting was really well done, especially the dirty bathroom shag. The writing was spectacular, to say the least, especially the dirty bathroom shag. And the cinematography with these claustrophobic close-up shots just felt so gripping, yet personal. Especially the dirty bathroom shag. No, I don't want a claustrophobic close-up there. In fact, the thing that I think the Squid Game managed to do almost perfectly was juxtapose nostalgia and horror. These two completely opposing feelings that, when blended together in this almost unworldly experience, felt almost natural. I mean, if you want an example of that, just take, for example, the first game. Red light, green light. A massive arena, open like a grass field on a nice sunny day in a preschool. A giant doll standing over the top commanding how the game will be played. Giant. Almost like how a child would perceive their teacher in preschool. You even see the same behaviours of people running towards the end as if they're better than everyone else. Just watch.
병신 걸렸네.
Whoa, okay. She'll be alright. But there was another psychology article I read that really made me stop and think about this whole thing. And it made me realise probably what made the Squid Game so big. Basically, this article suggested that nostalgia can lead to emotions of anxiety and loneliness, longing for those good old days, which is interesting. And that's where I think Squid Game thrives. It takes all the cliches and your knowledge of children's entertainment and it flips it on its head, creating that weird juxtaposed feeling. It feels so dissonant because what you expect isn't what you get. But I want to break the fourth wall really quickly because there's something that I want to clarify. Obviously, nostalgia is not the golden bullet to just create an incredible story. You can't dash a bit of nostalgia in your movie or book or art piece and it'll instantly be great. Obviously not. Nostalgia is a tool that has to be used well in the right circumstances. And I think that we can all agree that a lot of industries, especially the movie industry, love to overuse nostalgia, and they love to capitalize off how easily it is to use it because it's so clickable and it's just a good tease. Nostalgia is a tool, and I would like to take the credit for being the only commentary YouTuber to talk about tools and not be referring to a person. But the second main tool I'd like to talk about in this video is, in fact, something so obvious, but it's so important. Simplicity. Now, earlier in this video, I gave some examples of shows, basically Miraculous, Ladybug, and Cat Noir. Now, there's a reason I brought it up, and it's because I want to show you guys this. Behold, my graph. Yes, I made it with basically no research basis, hence why it's kind of shit. Basically, it ranges from how simple the show is to how complicated the show is, and it shows that there's a bit of a nice mid-spot from what I believe. So how about we start at the far end, on the simple side? On this end of the spectrum, there is actually nothing. Literally nothing. All that is here is corporate money-loving crap that is purely designed to mush your child's brain down into a blob that knows nothing except to watch and to invest in microtransactions. Slightly up from here, we have an actual form of attempt to write. Nothing too crazy, but it's enough to actually say that there's a story here. This is where I think Miraculous comes in, because Miraculous Season 1 was incredibly bland. There was literally nothing. It was just boy, girl, love. But Season 2 and later Season 3 broke out of this conventional good versus evil, good saves the day story arc. It actually showed bigger sides to these characters. It actually started fleshing out them as real three-dimensional dense characters. But I use the word dense because the show showed that it was so fucking dense in the 4th season. Holy shit. For example, there was this episode in the 4th season where basically Ladybug gives away her powers to her friend, revealing her identity, but, you know, she hasn't told Cat Noir, and he just kind of forgives her, ignoring all the emotional turmoil that would... Look, the show just shows that it was just... There's nothing there. This next spot on my graph is right in the sweet spot. This is where the gold comes through. This is where simplicity meets complexity to create a beautiful story. It's something that a child can understand easily, but it's also something that an adult can watch and just be happy about. It's nothing so crazy, but it's simple enough that it works. Like, my child brain could understand that the rat wanted to cook, and the rat had passion, so he helped the guy who also wanted a job, and then, oh no, emotional moment. I could tell that as a child. I didn't need some crayon to walk onto the screen and tell the magical trolls that big bad's happening. And now, as an older person, 16, I can tell more deeper emotions are being shown in these movies. Slightly up from here, I'd say this is where we get more complexity, and the further away from this beautiful sweet spot we get, I'd actually hazard to say that Squid Game is just over the complexity line. It's not something a child could watch completely ignoring the gruesome violence. I mean, as a story point of view, a child wouldn't understand what's happening. Daddy, why is Sung-woo getting shot? Oh, you see, Sung-woo needed to repay SNU for business class, but he was in debt. What's debt? You'll find out when you go to college. And I'd also hazard to say that Shang-Chi is here. I know a lot of people really liked Shang-Chi, but me personally, I just felt like it was doing too much in such a small time. But granted, you've kind of killed off the major bad guy of your series. How do you re-kickstart this entire franchise? It's not an easy thing to do, and there's no fault to Marvel there. And up on the final end, the Titanic bow of my graph, is literal white noise. Nothing makes sense here. This is where you see all of the garbage that has just been inflated artificially to the point where everybody just looks and wonders why. Why was it made? Why was it executed? And why you spent the money to go to the movie theater in the first place. But I want to return to just before the max complexity line in my graph. This is where I'd insert the story of the game series Five Nights at Freddy's. And for the record, I do really think FNAF is a great example. It's not just me needing an excuse to have fangirled over this for the last 7 years. I mentioned earlier in this video how the juxtaposition of childlike imagery and horrific imagery can blend together to make a really great story, and I think that's one of the things that made Five Nights at Freddy's stick out the way it did. From around 2014 to 2016, Five Nights at Freddy's almost dominated the indie horror series. Things started to get complex after 2016, as one of the things that made Five Nights at Freddy's so great was its elusive lore. Nobody truly knew any secrets, but at no fault of Scott Cawthon's, it's hard to prolong a story that's holding big secrets and also slowly reveal those secrets at the same time. Of course, as you start to show more in your series what you're trying to hide, the more is exposed. It's obvious, but how do you prevent that? It's not easy. It's also dangerous just because the fact that if a newcomer now wants to come to the series in 2021, they might feel suffocated by just the quantity of the information. FNAF 1 strived off its simplicity. It was limited by the fact that Scott Cawthon was using a block coder, so the absence of limitation is the enemy of art, isn't it? And the sound effects and the ambience were so childish and should be fun, but yet were terrifying. It gave this overwhelming sense of dread. FNAF 1 back in 2014 was almost perfect. No wonder such a great story came from such a perfect game. But these days the story is a little more complex. It used to be just a story about two engineers who used to make a whole bunch of robotic furries and then kill some kids in their spare time and really should just get a wife. But these days the story is about animatronic furries that will enter your consciousness through AI and junk robots and tentacle shape-shifting. Look, it's a weird franchise. And it's at no fault of the fanbase or the game creator, Scott Cawthon, but instead it's just how the cookie ended up crumbling. The point is that a story can become complex within an instant, potentially hostile to newcomers and hard for future developers. Although in FNAF's case, I actually do see a bright future with Security Breach. I like the fact that they've rebooted the series in a new way, not carrying on with the old story. So I'd like to see what this second wind can entail. Hey Pat. So, let's make like a good kids show and recap what we learnt today, kiddos. 2 tools. One that is incredibly powerful but needs to be used well, and the other that is not as powerful but definitely needs to be used to its 100% efficiency. Nostalgia is more than just an excuse for fan service. It's not the Star Wars sequels. No. It is something more. You need to flesh out what you create. And simplicity is a balance. That's why I brought up Five Nights at Freddy's, because in the beginning of its history, it was balancing those two concepts super well. And the Squid Games is one of the things that can lean more to the complex side, but because of its use of nostalgia, it is incredibly well written. And Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir is shit. But either way, all of those properties, and even more properties than that, can be incredible as long as the tools are used well. So you, my artist, my friend, whatever it is that you would decide to create, use those ideas. See where it takes you. And I'm sure you'll create something incredible. And I'd love to see what you can create, as I too will definitely be using a lot of those things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a long one to make for me, and I am looking forward to a long-deserved nap. Consider subscribing if you feel like it. Finish off the leftover Christmas turkey in your fridge, and I'll see you in the next one!